Hello, one and all, once again, and welcome to a special video. This will be my thoughts on last night's Stone Cold podcast with special guest, the one, the only, the one in 22 and 1, the beast incarnate, Brock Lesnar. And what can I say? This was another enjoyable episode of the Stone Cold podcast. I've looked forward to each and every one of these, and I just feel like this was going to be a good one going into it. Austin and Lesnar. You don't really hear too much from Brock, but in this interview, we really got to learn more about Brock and the way him and Austin interacted in the questions that were asked. I thought was well done. So let's just discuss my overall thoughts on the podcast. Um, like I said, we got to find out some things from Brock that we didn't previously know. Um, I liked early on, they were talking about hunting and what type of animals they like to hunt. And what I liked was when Austin brought up the fact that him and Lesnar need to get together to do a hunting show. And I think that would be badass. Could you imagine Brock Lesnar and Stone Cold together hunting? I mean, that would just be great content for the network, and I hope they eventually do go through with that. So they started talking about that. I'm kind of going out of place, not in any type of order, so I might not cover everything they talk about, but these are just the highlights that I observed. Austin asked Lesnar if he was ever a fan of professional wrestling, and Lesnar said no because he grew up on a farm and he didn't have that many channels, and it was kind of funny. He said really the only show that he watched growing up was Little House on the Prairie, so that was that was a funny answer. Then Lesnar was asked by Austin, about the class that he came into when he entered Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW, the developmental system, I believe around 2000. And that class consisted of John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, and he also mentioned Shelton Benjamin, and that was his roommate as well. So it was great hearing Benjamin's name brought up. I always liked Shelton Benjamin. And then they discussed, Lesnar eventually getting called up to the main roster and what that was like, and how he was just. It's amazing how fast, how little it took him to eventually become WWE champion in a short amount of time. And he talked about how he won the title from The Rock, and he talked about how much he learned from The Rock, how much of an inspiration he was and the motivation, and what he was able to take from listening to The Rock. So he had good things to say about The Rock. And Lesnar also talked about how eventually, being on the road so much grew on him, and he got sick and tired of the travel, and he just got fed up with the whole business, and he just wanted out. And we all know how it went down. He left in 2004 with his infamous match against Bill Goldberg, probably one of the worst matches in the history of the business. And who could forget when Lesnar, what we all thought was he flicked off the crowd, the fans, but he actually revealed that was to Vince McMahon because he just completely had it. So that was an interesting tidbit that I didn't previously know. And they also talked about the famous WrestleMania moment. I mean, it could have ended in near paralysis when Lesnar attempted to do the shooting star press, and he almost broke his freaking neck. And he said somebody told him that if you did this, it would be a WrestleMania moment. And for a guy his size, looking back, he realized that he didn't have to do that. It was completely ludicrous. It was dangerous, and it could have ended very badly for him. So he got away very lucky there. Then Austin and Lesnar also talked about, this was interesting, what Lesnar thought of the night when Austin walked out in 2002. I think it was in Atlanta, Georgia. He was scheduled to face Brock Lesnar and lose to him in the King of the Ring qualifier, and Austin thought this was the wrong move. He thought you could save this matchup, and build to it and make a lot of money off of it instead of just throwing it out there on a random episode of Raw. And Lesnar agreed with him, and Austin still said he regrets, how that all went down, but Lesnar said, well, it could have been handled better, on both sides, and yeah, I agree with him. And Brock, throughout the interview, he was just very, relaxed, laid back. He said he's a very private guy. He likes his privacy. He does not like being around people. And he said this was interesting when he goes out to the ring. The reason he's not, nervous or annoyed by being around all these people is he feels when he's in the ring, he feels like he's trapped in an isolated bubble, like he's protected from all the people, so it doesn't really bother him. So that was another interesting tidbit. Then they also talked about his transition, to football. He said he really couldn't cut it there. It was a lot harder than he thought it was going to be, and it just didn't really work out for him. It was just a way for him to vent his frustrations from leaving WWE. Then he eventually discussed how he became involved in MMA, the UFC, and how he had to really pester and get in Dana White's face literally to give him a chance to fight in the octagon. And they discuss, his many fights with Randy Couture when he won the UFC title, heavyweight title. And they also discussed how he had to, when diverticulitis really, that was it for him and the end of his, fighting career. And after that, after his, battle with it, he, eventually made the jump to WWE in 2012. He came back, and he said he's feeling, he's at 100%. He's finally free of diverticulitis. And he discussed when his last contract negotiations were up earlier this year, how he was really considering, going back to UFC. So that was interesting to hear from Brock. And another interesting part of the interview was when Stone Cold asked Brock, how do you compare Dana White and Vince McMahon? Well, he basically said they're kind of similar, and they both have very big egos, but Vince has bigger bankroll accounts. So, and he said he doesn't really hang out much with the boys in the back. I like this analogy he used. He punches in when he's there, and then he punches out, and then he goes home. That's what he does. That's what he's paid to do, and he does his job. And I just thought we really learned. I wish this went on longer. It was a good interview. I felt like it could have gone on another hour, and it would have been great. Only went on an hour and I think 5 minutes. Yeah, an hour and 5 minutes. But I really enjoyed it. Austin, Lesnar. There was no hint at a match between them for WrestleMania 32, so I didn't think that was going to happen. Didn't want to get my hopes up going into this podcast, but overall, I was thoroughly entertained, and if I had to give it a grade, I would give it an A-. It was really a solid hour of entertainment, and it was definitely better than Raw. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Stone Cold podcast with special guest Brock Lesnar. If you like what you see, please click that subscribe and like button, and comment down below and let me know what you thought of the Stone Cold podcast with Brock Lesnar. Tomorrow I will hopefully be able to upload my NXT review, and then either on Friday or Saturday look for my Hell in a Cell predictions video. And before I go, just I'd like to say once again, thank you all for watching my videos, and until next time, I am out. Peace.